Justice is the process of using laws to fairly judge and punish criminals. Just like adults, minors also commit crimes, and as such, justice ought to be seen to be done. Today on Law Express, we discuss juvenile justice. Stay tuned, we'll be right back after this commercial break.
They have rights under the Juvenile Justice Act, for instance, like rights of privacy, all through the process when they are arrested, during the trial, and even in sentencing. Their privacy is supposed to be kept intact.
So these trials are held in camera, not in open court?
Yes, they are held in camera.
Under our law, no matter the offense committed by a juvenile, okay, the maximum sentence is 3 years.
With me today to discuss the topic juvenile justice are two private legal practitioners, Philip Edem Kuchenyo and Martin Pebu. You're welcome, gentlemen, to Law Express.
Thank you.
A juvenile in law is defined to be somebody under the age of 18 years who commits an offense or who is in battle with the law.
Great. Yeah.
How really do we know that this person is under the age of 18? Because there are people, you know, who look really matured, but then could be below the age. And there are people also who look like minors, but actually may be far beyond the age of 18.
So in those circumstances, if a juvenile is arrested and taken to the police station, on being arraigned before a court of law, that's generally the juvenile court.
Yes.
If there is cause to doubt the juvenile's age, the presiding judge would ask that the parents furnish the court with evidence of the age of the juvenile. Primarily, they look for baptismal certificates, birth certificates, and then weighing card.
Okay.
Okay, and also any other evidence as a first day at school. The
Maybe
first time.
passports where applicable.
Yeah. Very good.
And,
Beyond this, when there is still a dispute as to the age of the juvenile, there is what we call, we do a radiology test. So in this instance, the juvenile is taken to the hospital and then a medical test is done. It's a radiology test. Yes, it's not exactly precise, but they give a range of the age. So if it falls below 18, then the court would accept it. Yes, these are the ways of ascertaining the age of a juvenile.
One may wonder why there should be juvenile justice as separate from the mainstream justice.
Okay.
yeah, you know, with juveniles, persons under the age of 18, when they are minors, they are younger persons, and would like to deal with them separately from the adults. And that's because you want to give them a second chance at life. You don't want to... so they have rights under the Juvenile Justice Act, for instance, like rights of privacy, all through the process when they are arrested, during the trial, and even in sentencing. Their privacy is supposed to be kept intact.
So these trials are held in camera, not in open court?
Yes, they are held in camera, and then in fact it is only the prosecutor, the juvenile, the parents of the juvenile, the victim and his parents.
Witnesses? Where necessary?
Where necessary, and then very limited people who have been authorized by the court to be present in the court.
And these trials are held in juvenile courts just for that purpose?
Yes, courts separately for the purpose. You know, the district magistrate courts in every district can sit as a juvenile court, and a family tribunal and a juvenile court.
Okay.
And then when they sit solely as a juvenile court, they deal with juvenile justice or cases involving juveniles. And if you read the act, it says that they have to sit on days that the normal courts don't sit, and then they have to sit separately from the normal courts.
So are we looking at weekends?
No,
Does that really happen in practice?
No, within weekdays, weekends you need there's an express authorization. It doesn't happen.
It doesn't.
So weekdays, but the essence of it, you can glean from the act, is to reduce the number of people around the court when juvenile cases are being heard, so that you reduce the risk of exposing the identity of the juvenile. That's the rationale behind it.
This whole rationale for privacy I would suppose, is to give the juvenile a second chance.
That's correct.
That is why for some number of years the record is even expunged, such that, after some time you just clear that whole record that this person was an offender when he was a minor.
That's correct.
That
But
is true.
what about the situations of repeat offenders? I mean, if you, the definition of a minor is somebody under 18. So we're looking at 17 years, 11 months, and maybe 29 days or 30 days.
Once is not
whichever.
Exactly.
Or let's say 364 days and some hours.
Exactly.
So
Just
if
short
you,
of the 18th birthday.
if you commit an offense, a second to your 18th birthday,
Yes.
why would we categorize such a person?
Still a juvenile, as long as it's not your 18th birthday.
But at the time of the trial, you would be doli capas.
Yes.
And by doli capas, we mean you'd have attained the age of majority.
Well, but that notwithstanding, the offense was committed at the time when the person was a
So you'd be
juvenile.
punished as a juvenile and handled like a
treated,
juvenile.
yes.
Exactly.
How is this practicable? Because then you have holding institutions like the Bostal homes and all of those that the remand centers that you take these people to during the pendency of the investigations and trial.
Yeah.
How do you take somebody who is now 18
Okay.
to that kind of facility, or they are sent to the general population remand centers?
Generally, for the remand home that we have in Accra, there are few though, but there's one in Accra. To the extent that the offense was committed before the child turned 18, they are kept at the remand home because he's still being dealt with as a juvenile. You see, even beyond 18, let's not take it as if once a child turns 18, everything has crystallized, he's become an adult. No. Even between 18 and 21, it's a transition period into adulthood.
Yes.
So under the Act, it even seeks to give further protection until the child hits 21. So it's not strange that even though the child has hit 18, he will still be handled with, by the the remand home, Usu remand home, because that way it still helps the child, okay, so that we don't expose the child to the full rigors of the adult criminal justice system. The protection is very
in
important.
essence, the justification of having juvenile justice as distinct from mainstream justice is just to protect
That's
the
correct.
minors
That's
so that they have a second chance when they become adults.
Perfect.
Still to come on Law Express.
When you go back to a traditional home setting, what they term mini papa is actually defilement, where
Exactly.
there's some sexual activity, and most people just hoot at these children and leave them. Meanwhile, these are serious offenses because this is how they start and then end up as rapists.
This girl had a baby and she must have suffered postpartum depression.
Yeah.
So what she did was that she cut the baby into pieces.
When a child steals from me, I'll just talk to her or him in the house. Because beating is not safe. When you beat him or her, you're just throwing him or her away. You're letting him go astray.
He was trying to steal something from me and then he was caught. Actually, I don't need to send him to police station or to beat him bitterly or this. The best thing I supposed to do is to sit him down, then talk to him and advise him that the stealing is not good. When you start practicing from home, you will take it out.
If you don't punish the child will go ahead and steal more from other people.
I'll probably embarrass that kid in front of his or her friends so that it will deter that person from, or maybe punish the person in the house.
If it's an outsider and I have an understanding for us to talk about it and understand, then fine. But if they are not on board for us to talk about it, then I think it should run out and seek the courts to go forward.
Juveniles are to be taken to court because they have committed a crime, and the law states that whoever has committed a crime should be justified for his or her actions. So yes, they should be taken to court.
Sometimes when you talk to them at home, they don't listen. So the best way is to face the law.
Oh, should be treated in the house. Taken to court is a bit too extreme. Yeah.
They shouldn't be taken to the court, but they should rather be taken to a youth. I don't know really how it works here in Ghana, but to a youth center where they will educate them and tell them, like let them know that what they did is wrong, but they shouldn't go to prison as adults.
No, I don't think they should. They should, because for me, I know they are underage, but if they are of age for them, fine, but they are underage, I don't think they should be taken to court. They should rather be taken to where they can handle them apart from court.
Settling that case at home is far better than taking it to court.
And he said, "Don't go court, but me was say can't now because I cried there.
I don't think in Ghana our police station is a place to bring a child up properly by taking the child to the police station or let the child learn a lesson from the police station. No.
Depending on the kind of knowledge I have about education and dealing with children, I guess there are better ways to mold the child to get better. Because if I take him or her to the police station, that might damage his or her life entirely. So the best thing for me is just to look for a way to correct the child.
Sometimes kids are aware of what they do, and sometimes they need to be punished very severely, but because they are underage and they know that they are underage, they take it as an excuse to, misbehave.
I would prefer to keep the matter in the house because our part of the world, issues are not dealt with as they are supposed to deal with. And if care is not taken, you take the child to the courts and the child will come back doing what he does more than 10 times.
Wow, this is really interesting. Very, very different and diverse, reaction to juveniles.
Yes.
I mean, whereas some people think that they should still go in the traditional way of disciplining children in, the spirit of communal living.
Mm-hmm.
So some people think that they should go further and then go to the law.
See, I think it's because of, you could say, ignorance of the law. But
okay.
The way juveniles are, they are dealt with lightly, if I should put it that way, because even the police officer can caution the juvenile. Under Section 12 of the Juvenile Justice Act, a police officer can caution the juvenile with or without conditions, depending on the nature of the offense.
So we are looking at light offenses,
yes,
like
offenses that are not serious under the Juvenile Justice Act.
It's pickpocketing,
and
petty stealing
and stuff like that. The police officer can even caution them and then let them go. So, well, it depends. We are in a society that also believes in what we call customary arbitration, having the family sit down and discuss some of these
try
things.
to settle them.
So, yes.
Except that they shouldn't be settling serious offenses. And by serious offenses, we mean cases such as defilement, armed robbery, narcotics, murder. Okay, yes. These are not, they are very serious. The Juvenile Justice Act categorizes them as serious offenses. So for those, the parents and the society at large should not attempt at all to settle them. Even beyond that, there are other second-degree offenses that they shouldn't be settling. So putting it another way, the law envisages and permits the situation of settling cases, when those cases are misdemeanors. That's what the Court Act says, that we can settle misdemeanors. But for felonies, those are very serious offenses. They should be dealt with by a court of law.
Recently, I handled a case of stealing involving a juvenile who was just above 12 years old. Yes, it was this young girl. She entered a shop, a provincial shop in front of their house, and then she stole out of the sales that had been made the day. I think a lady at home saw her with the money and she asked where she got it from. And I think upon serious questioning, she broke down and then confessed that she took it from the shop. And she was brought to the juvenile court, and the court cautioned her. Apparently she had spent some of the money, and the parents were asked to pay the full amount.
So she got off with just a caution?
Yeah, she got off with just a caution. And,
It's a case of stealing also. Okay, we are yes, you know, by law we are not to reveal the identities of the juvenile.
Yes.
Okay, yes, this boy also stole. Okay, he was brought to court, and then after the trial, he was convicted and then sent to the Senior Correctional Center in Mamobi. The good side of this particular story is that, you know, because they are allowed to learn trades whilst they are in at the Senior Correctional Center, yes, while serving the term. This boy has come out now. He learned electricals, wiring, and those stuff, and now he's continuing. He's found a new master, okay, and he's continuing. But his story is so inspirational because apart from doing the work as an electrician, what he's done is that he's set up a bobo group. Okay, so he has people, and then they go and perform at social events and make money on the side. Wow. So what I'm looking at is the fact that now this is a leader of his sort. He has gathered young people who follow him. You see, so it's not just bobo, but it means that in a way he's also a mentor to them, because as the leader of the group, he directs them and he gives them focus. You see, so this particular story underscores the fact or the point for giving juveniles a second chance. Let's not go too far. Even let's examine our own lives. When we were younger, a lot of us did a lot of bad things, very bad. I'm sure if those days were today, we probably also would have ended up in court, and I mean, the rest would be history. So as for giving juveniles a second chance, it is something that we all should support, because they turn out to be the future leaders. Okay.
Let's look at juvenile sexual offenses. First of all, are they categorized as serious offenses?
That's correct, yes.
And how are these handled where the offense was perpetrated against another minor?
Okay. Yes, so I'll take a bit of it and then we'll come in. So juvenile sexual offenses, primarily a juvenile, okay, can be charged for defilement. The main one, the commonest one, is defilement. And defilement is having natural or unnatural carnal knowledge of a child below 16 years.
So simply having sexual contact with a child below 16 years.
Yes, so sexual contact, because it's natural and natural carnal knowledge, it means that either vaginal contact or anal, okay? Yes, either way, it would qualify as defilement. Yes, because the law says natural or unnatural carnal knowledge. Yes, so for this particular offense, as I stated earlier, it is the commonest sexual offense that juveniles commit. Okay, and when such a thing happens, the law would usually, I mean, the procedure is that when such a child is eventually convicted, whether boy or girl, and it's also, let me add that defilement is gender neutral. It can be committed by a boy or can be committed by a girl. Okay, so if such a child is convicted, under the law, there's a maximum sentence of 3 years. Maximum, there's no minimum. So the judge or the court can use a discretion to give anything, but not beyond 3 years. So this tells you that defilement is quite a serious offense. It's in the category. It's in the same category as murder and the other ones we mentioned earlier. Yes, Edwin.
It is, in fact, and like Martin said, it's among the juveniles is one of the commonest offenses that are reported in court every day.
Or one of the commonest that is not really that reported, because when you go back to the traditional home setting, what they term mamini papa is actually defilement, where there's some sexual activity, and most people just hoot at these children and leave them. Yes. Meanwhile, these are serious offenses, because this is how they start and then end up as rapists.
Yeah. And then sometimes what's you get cases where, for instance, the juvenile is 17 years, the victim is around 15, 16. You hear stories that they are even boyfriend, girlfriend.
Yes, but the law says the girl's consent is no consent.
Exactly.
To be candid, sometime in future we may have to really look at that particular, the way the law is couched, because when the two persons consent like that, yes, as I'm saying it, very fully aware that the law says a girl who is below 16 years, her consent to sex is no consent. Yes. But on the other hand, too, practically, once she's consented and then she's with another juvenile, somehow it borders on, let me call it discrimination in quotes, okay, and unfairness to send a boy to a correctional center.
I think this consent bit, being linked to the age of a minor, should also be looked at in the context of maturity. There are some people who are 12, but you can see that they have a better, capacity to discern and then make decisions. So I think this should be.
And then, how is the court supposed to come to that determination?
No, but there are others obviously who may have psychological issues. The children who have some disability, especially in the mind. Yes. So even where they even attain majority, still their consent cannot be consent.
Yes.
So I think it should be looked at, holistically, and then some advancements should be brought in and some amendments, to make it fairer and more effective.
Okay.
Well, so that's the magistrates in the juvenile courts usually exercise their discretion.
Yes.
Because you could have, though defilement is a very serious offense, you can have situations where the juvenile is still committed to or is sentenced to probation.
Okay.
And then he's committed to the care of his parents, looking at the circumstances.
Or some other responsible relative.
Exactly, some other responsible relative. Sometimes, even if the child has to be taken out of that setting, most of these cases happen in situations where you have a broken home. The father is living at one place, the mother is also living at. I've been involved in a case where, now, at the end of the day, this was a migrant, a boy who had come down from Cape Coast, and he was living on his own in Accra, in Circle. Yes.
And Hawken.
Yes. And that's a trend, like you said. Most of them, they are migrants.
They are migrants. They have come from all over. Now, at the end of the case, we needed where to even put this child. So we had to send somebody, together as a Juvenile Justice Project, had to fund this. And he said his mother is in Okumpuano, somewhere in the central region. So we had to send somebody. They went there, they located the mother. She was living a different life. She had remarried, had new kids.
And she didn't even care.
She didn't even care. When she came to the courts, the magistrates asked her, when was the last time you saw this boy? The last time you saw the boy, he was 5 years old.
Wow.
This is the child who's now 17, and he's living on his own. So indeed, that boy had to be committed to the senior correctional facility, and the mother was warned to make sure he visits him, send him provisions regularly. And this is basically how we deal with them.
Let's look at, your definition about defilement included unnatural carnal knowledge.
That's correct.
Issues about sodomy amongst minors.
As for sodomy amongst minors, we haven't. We would not say we've seen a lot. No, they are relatively few. And at least we have quite a lot of experience in this. We've done over 500 cases involving juveniles, and the sodomy cases are, let me say, very negligible.
Very small percentage.
Yes. The main one is about the normal defilement. That's about vaginal contact.
But perhaps
just to jump in here, legally, there's no offense like sodomy.
Yes.
It's actually defilement.
Yes,
because it's defined to contain both natural and unnatural carnal knowledge.
That's what I was going to add. That perhaps because the definition is just defilement in block, then we know that those kind of offenders will be treated like those who had a natural, sexual contact. There have been instances where sexual offense or sexual relations between two juveniles have resulted in pregnancy.
Yes.
Naturally, when you were defining sexual offenses by juveniles, you talked about the fact that the females could actually be the offenders. So where the female is the offender and then she gets pregnant, naturally, such a person cannot be taken into the regular mainstream custody or the Buster homes. Perhaps be kept at home on some form of probation, and then maybe the other party, which is maybe the male, maybe also sorted out in some other way. There are other instances of juvenile offenses that are actually major offenses.
Yeah, for instance, murder, but strictly speaking, the juvenile courts cannot deal with a case in which the punishment for the offense is death.
Yes.
Yes, unless maybe the juvenile is charged with manslaughter. then maybe the juvenile court can deal with that case. But then I remember there was once a case was brought in there where it was reduced to dangerous driving because it was a driver's mate, and
decided to have a
he
go.
just decided to have a go. He sparked the car, moved a few meters, and then he knocked down some old man, and he died immediately.
Oh no!
Yes. So in the event of a murder, specifically, what the law envisages is that the juvenile will be tried by any other competent court. But when it comes to sentencing, then the juvenile will be remitted back to the juvenile court for sentencing. So under our law, no matter the offense committed by a juvenile, okay, the maximum sentence is 3 years. So even if a juvenile commits murder, when he's tried by a court of competent jurisdiction apart from the juvenile court, he has to be remitted back to the juvenile court for sentencing.
So
Now,
at that point, are we not dispensing with the issue of privacy and protection of the juvenile?
yes.
Because of the nature of the crime?
Yes.
Yes. Yes and no. Yes and no, because if the juvenile commits the offense alone, okay, then in the other court, whether it's if it's a high court, if it's
Yes.
murder, okay, he will be tried. That protection will still be afforded him. It will not be in open court. Okay, they will still do it in camera and give him the protection that he would have received in the juvenile court. He only loses the protection on the face of law when he has committed the offense with adults. Yes, but even that one, I've seen some very forward-looking judges who
do separate trials
yes, but
for conspiracy.
That's correct. That's correct. So but some other people on the face of the law, if the juvenile is with adults, the law doesn't seem expressly to say it should still be in camera, but it takes a good judge to make an order that, look, for him or her, the trial will still be done in camera. Because, and I support those judges who do that, because a juvenile is still a juvenile, whether he was with adults or he was alone. We've done this case of several cases of murder, but let me mention one. There's this one that this girl had a baby, and she must have suffered postpartum depression.
Yeah.
So what she did was that she cut the baby into pieces.
Oh,
Cut
no.
the baby into pieces. Yeah, very gory. I'm sorry about that, but it happened. She cut the baby into pieces and then threw the pieces out. I mean, that's the dismembered body away. This juvenile was arrested and brought to the facility. And so what we did was that we represented her. Eventually, we got bail for her. You know, for somebody, postpartum depression in itself is...
It's a medical condition.
Exactly. So it means that the juvenile herself...
Has to be treated.
Exactly. So fortunately, the state didn't prosecute the case. Yes, we've done other cases like that where juveniles have been involved in.
And subsequently,
murder.
what happened? Did you follow through to be sure that she was now fine?
Okay.
She had recovered?
Okay.
What are the follow-up,
That's the problem. Yes, it's a very salient point you've raised. Yes, aftercare. We will call
Yes.
it aftercare. Yes, that one we are largely constrained. See, this work we do with Edemeko, we are a group of lawyers. We are 6. We try to represent the juveniles in court, and after that, we are limited. We are constrained. So following up,
I think you should count me in now. So we are 7.
Very good. Very good. We'll be very happy to have you on board. Yes, yes. So.
But there's also another murder case currently ongoing, and it's taking quite some time now. This happened in the eastern region. The story is that there's this girl, she sells oranges. So she was going to the farm to pluck some oranges, and then she saw this old man on the farm. She went to talk to the old man, and then the old man's son came, and along the line there was heckling. So the story goes that the girl turns, she's going, then the guy goes, taps her on the shoulder. This girl just turns and stabs the boy.
Oh.
And the guy died in the hospital. In fact, the girl herself is troubled. She's a minor, but she's very troubled, and she's at the psychiatric hospital now. Yeah, we're waiting for reports from the doctors whether or not she's fit to even stand trial.
That's terrible. terrible stuff.
Another interesting one is a case of narcotics. Okay, there was this juvenile who was used by some adults. He was given food to give to a prison inmate. Actually, a person in custody, a suspect in custody at the Nima police station. Unknown to the juvenile, there was wee in the food. The wee had been placed in the bowl and then the food put on top. So this juvenile took the food to the police station, and then the police in their random checks, inspected the food and found out that there was wee, marijuana. Yes, so this juvenile was arrested and then...
You are in custody, that is at the cells?
That's correct.
And how would you even use marijuana whilst in custody?
Oh, that's another matter. It's well documented that even in the prisons, yes.
Yeah, prisons, that is where they live full time.
Yes.
But cells is just a holding space.
Yeah, it's
and
amazing.
usually our cells are so tiny, and you have the police sitting right in front. How are you going to use marijuana in such a confined space? That you should go through all this trouble and in the end incriminating a minor.
Yes. There are so many forms of using marijuana.
Exactly.
well, actually referred to my mind to that.
Yes.
You know, when you think marijuana, all you think about is puffing and smoking,
Exactly.
you know.
Some will ingest it in other forms. Yes. So this juvenile was arrested and brought, and we represented him. So at the end of the day, looking at the circumstances, it was very clear to the court that the juvenile didn't know that there was actually marijuana in there. So he got acquitted and returned to school. And we are very much interested in the juveniles, becoming success stories. After going through the trial process. Because
reformation and transformation.
Exactly. We have a lot of stories of juveniles who have returned to normal life. They've been able to reintegrate after their encounter with
Counsel, hold your fire. We'll be right back after this commercial break. We'll go more into details in just a moment.
Still to come on Law Express.
The last time we were in the facility, they had about 17 workshops. So from carpentry to masonry, dressmaking, fitting, I think there were about 17 workshops.
Wouldn't this make some people intentionally commit offenses? I mean, you want to learn a trade, you don't have the capital, so fast track.
It's funny you mentioned that. There have been times when the parents will go like, I've heard that the Mamprobi place is very fine, so I want you to let my son go to Mamprobi. You know?
It's terrible.
My uncle is a lawyer, and then I followed my uncle to the courts one day. There was a case about rape on a juvenile, and then he was not taken to the juvenile court, he was taken to the law court. So my uncle just stood by and then asked the court to just discharge the guy because he was to be taken to the juvenile court. So that law is not being followed properly in our country. So we have juvenile courts, but they are not well enforced.
You know, in the course of our discussion, we always tied in punishments for juveniles, you know, and I know there are fines, you know, fines that are ordered against the juveniles, and I'm sure it's, you know, to get juveniles who already have some form of trade, like hawkers and all of that, who make some kind of money to pay those fines. There are fines that are targeted at parents, and I know there will be community service where you are, you know, asked to clean, apart from the custody, you know, sentences, like keeping them in postal homes, and then...
we like to say correctional
facilities, you know.
Okay. Yeah, so under Section 29, I think you've mentioned a lot of them, that we call it diversion. Institutionalization is the last resort, is the punishment of last resort. Yes. Institutionalization is, as you mentioned earlier, taking the juvenile into a correctional center.
Yes.
Yes, it is a last resort because general research has shown that it's better for the juvenile to be given any other form of sentence than institutionalization. So the Act has listed the various ways of dealing with
And by the Act, you mean the Juvenile Justice Act 2003?
Yes, Act
653.
Yes, so as you mentioned, apart from institutionalization, we have fines. So the juvenile may be ordered to pay a fine, or the parents of the juvenile may be asked to pay the fine. Okay? Yes. And apart from fines, you may be asked to give an apology. The juvenile may be asked to give an
unqualified apology.
Yes, yes. And then especially the most used one is the probation. So probation is a form of punishment in which the juvenile is allowed to go back home in the care of the parents or any other fit person. If there are no parents or relations, any fit person, and there's a way the court has ways of getting fit persons. So the juvenile is allowed to go home in the care of.
And people can actually volunteer to do such.
That's
to
correct.
render
Some
such
years
services,
ago, yes, as I mentioned, I took a juvenile home. I did. I kept him, for that period. Yes. So these are the ways of dealing with a juvenile, so that, as we mentioned, we give them a second chance. So if this probation or the fines are not appropriate, and the court finds that institutionalization is the best, then so be it. But as we stated, the maximum sentence that the juvenile will be allowed to stay in a correctional center
it's worth adding that these custody sentences or correctional custodial sentences or correctional facilities are not like the mainstream ones.
That's correct.
You go there and then you still have an opportunity to learn a trade and then make meaning out of your life during the pendency.
That's
of,
correct. That's correct. The last time we were in
stay.
the facility, they had about 17 workshops. So from carpentry to masonry, dressmaking, block laying, fitting. I think there were about 17 workshops.
Wouldn't this make some people intentionally commit offenses? I mean, you want to learn a trade, you don't have the capital, so fast track.
It's funny you mentioned that. There have been times when the parents will go like, "Oh, I've heard that the Mamprobi place is very fine, so I want you to let my son go to Mamprobi."
It's terrible.
It happens. But just to touch on diversion again, it comes under this form of a victim offender mediation. So the key is that you want to let the juvenile take responsibility. You encourage the juvenile to take responsibility you encourage them to talk to their victim, to apologize, take responsibility for what they have done. And we think through that they even learn some form of responsibility as well. And then with time,
And then there's an opportunity to observe them to be sure they've really changed.
Exactly.
On a day-to-day basis,
Yes,
where you can monitor and evaluate.
Yes, so there's a probation officer. So what happens is that the probation officer has the duty to visit the juvenile.
Yes.
And then check on the progress. And so he writes a report and then updates the court with how the juvenile is faring.
I must add also that there's a lot of counseling during this time, the probation officers. In fact, the social welfare department, although it's very stretched, very thin, they try a lot in these cases, and they do their best. They counsel them, they visit them, and then make sure that they are not repeating these offenses. Those who promise to go back to school are in school, and then they are doing very well.
Awesome. Repeat offenders. You've been punished. You committed a crime. You've been punished, through or by any of those that we listed. And then you go back and how often does this happen? What's the percentage?
Fortunately for us in Ghana, the percentage is very low. Yes, another name for them is what? Recidivists.
Yes.
Yeah, the recidivists in Ghana, they are very low as compared to other jurisdictions. When you read online, compared to America and Britain, their rates are far higher. Ghana, at least, we can talk about our experiences, and as we said, we've done over 500 cases. Out of this, the recidivists are very few. They are few, but they are there. Yes, there was this, I can mention this case of this juvenile. For him, he got into trouble within a period of 2 years. He came in 3 times. Yes, he was arrested 3. So let me go step by step. He was first arrested, dealt with, natural fact, the court was still dealing with him. While the trial was ongoing, he escaped from custody. And then he was never found. The next time he was found, it was in connection with another crime. Yeah. So he was brought back to the Osu remand home. And then, while the first trial was going on, so the second trial was started a bit, but because the first one hadn't been completed, we had to. So we went back to continue the first trial. And then in the process, he escaped again, went and then allegedly committed another crime. So he was brought in the 3rd time, and as usual, he escaped. From that time till date, we haven't, found him.
That's alarming.
Yes, he's the most notorious recidivist.
It's important to note that trials that pertain to juveniles have to be, done quickly within a period of 6 months. Failing which the juvenile has to be released unconditionally to go.
Yes.
And does that happen often?
Yes, it does.
Because of the nature of our justice system and how slow it can be.
You find the parents of victims raving and ranting after, under Section 33, you rightly stated that after 6 months, the juvenile is supposed to be discharged unconditionally, and it happens. Well, like we said, they are juveniles. We want to treat them in such a manner that we can correct them, we can reform them. The aim is not so much to punish them.
But talking about this punishment, we've discussed the situation where we get the juvenile to own his offense or crime and, teach them some form of responsibility.
That's correct.
But you see, where there's a serious offense like murder or manslaughter, you know that there are families involved at the other end.
Yes.
The victim would belong to some family. Are there no situations where the victim's family is never satisfied?
Yes, that's
and
correct.
they feel like this person just got away freely after taking away somebody dear to them.
That's correct.
And how do we handle with these kind of situations?
It's counseling and education. So as I mentioned, even for the murder, the maximum...
Is the system well equipped for counseling and education?
What happens is that even as lawyers, we all become amateur counselors. The judges counsel the victims' relations and all that. So they get all manner of counseling. But as you said, yes, there are serious constraints in terms of counseling, the professional counseling. So the social welfare officers help as well.
My fear is that people may try to take justice in their own hands, even after the person has been punished duly, because maximum sentencing is 3 years. And after 3 years, they are not healed. They see him around. They think that the guy is now a mature adult who is walking around after killing their son or daughter some few years back.
Yes, you've raised a very salient point. So because of that, in two of the cases that we've handled concerning murder, after the juveniles were granted bail, the strategy we took was that the juvenile had to be taken to a different community. So the juvenile didn't return to the community where the offense took place. No, they were taken elsewhere.
We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Still to come on Law Express.
So education would help a lot to reduce the incidents. So now that we've run this program, if children see that the law would punish them for engaging in criminal offenses, and by the way, the age of criminal responsibility starts from what? 12. Age 12. So that would be notice to children to behave themselves.
We cannot discuss juvenile justice without talking about ways to curb, juvenile offenses or offenses committed by minors.
Okay.
And from my understanding, the entire community has a role to play.
That is true. That is true. Starting with the parents. Most of the cases you realize that they have come as a result of laxity in parenting. And especially parents with female children have to be very careful because there are lots of these defilement cases. It's just because parents lost, they were not able to supervise their kids properly. That there are also issues of single parenting. There are times you have single parents and they are focused on, getting something on the table.
That's why I always say there's nothing like part-time parenting. It's just a full-time job, and you can't lose focus, for a little while.
Yes, parenting is a big challenge in Ghana. It's a very big challenge, but somehow it looks like we haven't had much traction on it. But if, as Adam stated, a lot of it stems from bad parenting, lack of supervision. Okay, so apart from parenting, we would also look at education. Think just like this program. So education would help a lot to reduce the incidents. So now that we've run this program, if children see that the law would punish them for engaging in criminal offenses, and by the way, the age of criminal responsibility starts from what? 12. Age 12. So that would be notice to children to behave themselves. Okay. So apart from education, to another way of helping to curb the incidents is that but I should bring out more of the cases that have gone to court and those children haven't been punished. So so let's say it's also a subset of education, more or less. If those cases were thrown out into or brought to the public, published, then the whole society will be put on notice.
I think religious bodies have a rare opportunity, apart from admonishing them on spirituality. This is another opportunity because they have people together at one place. Little, they can have education once again using the religious, should I say attraction or point. It will sink in deeper. They can bring people to talk to the youth, especially those who have been through the system and perhaps are reformed.
Particularly in the rural areas and places beyond Accra, because like I said, most of the offenders are also migrants, persons who have come from various parts of Ghana to Accra. And the truth is that they are living in the streets. Nowadays, you close at 8 p.m. going home and you see a little boy by the traffic light begging for... And in fact, I've seen a juvenile I represented in court one day by the traffic. And I told him, hey, I know you. What are you doing here? And then he ran away.
Oops.
That's great. So this particular point, looking at it from what we've said so far, the various actors, it underscores the point that it takes a whole community to raise a child. But it appears now, because of the breakdown of the traditional family system, where you have the extended family supporting, it looks like we've become more individualistic now.
It's worth mentioning that these offenders who commit these offenses in should I say, developed parts of our country, like in Accra, especially with the migrants, they don't ordinarily commit these kind of offenses back at home, where they were at, within a home setting.
So urbanization.
So it's just this whole thing of lack of supervision and,
Indeed, one of the boys told me he's lost both parents, and he was living with his grandmother somewhere in the central region. And at a point, the grandmother couldn't take care of him. I think the grandmother also died. And there was nobody to really take care of him. So he was just there. And then one day he joined a truck to Accra. And ever since, he's been living at Circle.
That's sad.
So, yes. And he was brought in for stealing. I think he said he was hungry. He just needed something to... The whole society, the community as large, from
we all have a role
religious
to play.
Societies to families, the parents.
If we fail to play our role in getting these people to do the right thing, they become grown-up, adult offenders.
That's correct.
And that is more serious, and then it becomes a cycle.
Yes, so a very vicious cycle, because they become hardened criminals if the system doesn't take good care of them. And then we are all in danger. Yes, that's the net effect of it.
That's it.
When a child commits an offense, it's time for us to move away from that old habit of beating them up or beating them to pulp, because it doesn't help the situation and it doesn't reform them in any way. Our goal should be to transform them, reform them, and bring them back with a story to dissuade others from going in the same line.
Perfect.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for watching Law Express.